Hi, and welcome to Decoding AQ, helping you to learn the tools, mindsets, and actions to thrive in an ever-changing world. Hi, everybody, and welcome to our next episode of Decoding AQ. Today, I've got a good friend of mine, Lars Hyland, with me, and he has almost 3 decades of experience in the design and implementation of large-scale learning programs for some of the largest brands on the planet. You were also head of consulting at Epic when they won the e-learning company of the year. And you now sit as the chief learning officer at Totara, which is an open learning technology platform. So I'm really looking forward to digging into our conversation together. So welcome, Lars.
Thank you. It's lovely to be here.
Good. So first question, have you always lived in Brighton?
Oh, good question. No, you might guess from the name. It has a Scandinavian tilt to it. And I was born in Copenhagen in Denmark, but quickly, as you can tell from my accent, moved to London and grew up in South London. So it's been a long time there, and then studied up north, Manchester, York, did a master's up there, and then got my first job actually chose this what now is a much more mainstream industry than it was back then. As you can imagine, the concepts of interactive media, interactive media in its general sense was fairly new and novel, and certainly pre-internet. So I got my first job down on the South Coast, working for a company that is now no longer around, called Future Media, which was one of the pioneers actually in interactive video, which was these big 12-inch discs where you could do it as sort of interactive random access videos. So I could geek out on that quite a lot. But at the end of the day, we were doing some quite interesting things back then in terms of genuine simulations. It was hard work. It was good quality video, interesting interaction, and 16 colors on your PC. So that's how it was.
Very cool.
But over that time, we've swapped that, haven't we, for everything to be fully connected online, great broadband, and a really good media experience.
I guess it's interesting that, you can plot various things over those, nearly 3 decades, as I say, of where some things have stayed the same and some things have changed. Certain principles about the methodology or thinking of learning and, applying knowledge and sharing knowledge, to then the realms of possibility that has happened through internet and connectivity and things. From a sense of your career through each of those, journeys, places, moments that you worked in, what's kind of shaped some of that career in your thinking? What are maybe some of the highlights of experiences that have evolved the way you think?
Well, I've always had a strong interest in technology, have done since the early days. In fact, that master's I did was in music technology. So it was a bit of a mashup between an earlier degree of information technology and business, how does it apply in a workplace, and then having a crack at the music side of things, which deep dived even more into how technology impacts particular domains, such as music, for example. And there are, if you look at it, music is a massive early adopter of technology. The first universal network was something called music. Well, I've forgotten the name of it now. It was a MIDI, basically the digital interface that connected all the synthesizers and samplers and things that now we just take for granted. And in fact, we take it even further for granted because we can do all of these things on our phone or our iPad, and it's much more simple than it was back in the 80s and the 90s, when it sort of really started to take hold culturally. So, but I slight digression, but what I was doing back then was trying to use novel technology with coding, interesting new ways to make sounds and control sound, but then also to help musicians use it. And I realized I was the only one putting help on my programs. I was the only one really interested in the user interface as well, to make it really straightforward. And then so it got me more and more interested in how computers can help you learn more effectively, and not just learn, but do things more effectively. So I had this hypothesis or a view, but that back then, and it's only just been relatively recently that this has started to become real, is that computers were things that did useful things, but they were often quite complicated and difficult to use, and that you had to go elsewhere, find out how to learn it, to then go back and do it. And that's a sort of simplistic way of looking at a lot of training that people still do, is they're abstracted away from their workplace, and then they're asked to come back into the workplace and apply that new knowledge and skills. And in fact, that's often very challenging and not that effective way of doing it. So back then, when is this? This is 1990. Realized that what if I could turn that around? What if I could create a learning environment, like an interactive learning environment, in which you could actually do these complicated things, or more relatively complicated things, like creating these amazing sounds in software, which was novel back then. So that was what I did my thesis on, was that, and then was tasked with creating it, which I managed to do in a fantastic technology called HyperCard, which was an Apple product back then, which was the forefather really of democratizing access to creating interactive media. So it was ahead of its time. It became very, very popular, in fact, and then for some unknown reason disappeared probably a couple of decades or 15 years ago. But I'm telling that story because that notion of being able to create a rich learning environment in which you can perform your role and job effectively, so you've got this support network around you that it actively supports you, is really now only becoming a reality, isn't it? With the technologies that we have. Yeah. So it's taken that length of time, a lot of evolution and change in technology, and to a lesser extent, a change to the way people understand how we learn and how we do things in our job and how we behave, particularly in the workplace and also in education. So yeah, it's been a long journey, but it's very exciting. Next 10 years or so, I think.
Every moment that you live is the most exciting moment to be alive, right? Because of we share this kind of passion for future and for technology, and the opportunities of where that can make things easier and better. It's getting that way. It's democratizing it from where it was, like you said, quite technically challenging to use that tool to create what you wanted to create. But now the ability for everyone to be a content creator in just about every medium has opened up now from a challenge of maybe creation to one of filtering and curation, where we're almost overwhelmed from too much. And I'm interested to understand from your perspective of, with all of these different technologies that have come and gone, and more use them, less use them, what's been some of the fundamentals of learning, particularly in e-learning and these immersive technologies, that has stayed true throughout all of those periods of, oh, there's this software or this technology or this platform? What are the sort of core principles that you've always felt back on about how people learn, or the behaviors or things like that we can learn from you?
Yeah, indeed. Well, one of them is it's simple but difficult, which is that in any attempt to support a large group of people, typically with a new set of knowledge or skills and behaviors that you want to encourage, is that the technology there is there as a support to help with scalable access to that, and to understand how people are progressing with that process. And you've got a plethora, an amazing choice now of different types of media that you can use, interactive or otherwise. Making those choices as to what you use needs to be secondary to the core succinct descriptions and the core content that's being conveyed. And it's not just content, it's the activities that you're asking people to do, the sequence in which they do them, how they interact with others as part of a group, how that interfaces with the actual real world workplace that they're in. And that means you've got more and more variables that you can't control as a result. But you've got to be mindful of that if you're really interested in the end outputs being effective and actually supporting these people to make that journey effectively. So, there's a risk that you get too fixated on the technology because you can at the expense of that. And there's plenty of unfortunate stories of projects that have failed where you've had great investments made in using these things, and they fall to the side because they miss the fundamental points around it. Often some of the most effective learning solutions are the ones where you've genuinely spent time understanding what people are currently doing and how they're going to move, how you want them to move to a new way of doing things. And it can be quite simple solutions. In fact, it may not even be a training solution. It may be just a switch in the tools they use or the people that they interact with, or just removing barriers. So that performance support mentality, I think, and that performance consulting, which is now more of a thing. I mean, it was always a thing. Performance support was always a thing, predating everything I was doing back in the early 80s. Some really strong proponents of that, and they're still there. But it's taken a long time, I think, for that thinking to become more mainstream.
Accepted, yeah.
Yeah.
I think one of the challenges I'm seeing a lot, and it's always been there, this sort of issue around scaling training, scaling learning, where the stats are pretty shocking in terms of how many actually do it. You can provide it, you can have great technology, you can have great content, but then we're in the low percentages of those not only get it, oh, I'm excited, I sign up, but follow it through, and not only follow it through, get the outcome at the other end that you're wanting, the performance gain, the new bit of knowledge, the new way of thinking. Is that sort of gap between those that are trying to design, prepare, provide, and implement, and those that are going through it and on it. There's always this challenge of some sort of disconnect of the follow through. And I don't think we've got this right yet. And it's a huge opportunity for transformation, because a lot of our whole education market has stayed very similar for a long time. And I'm critically, challenged by a lot of companies that are saying, well, this works in this little isolation, in this pilot, in this little bit where there's a bit of energy or a champion behind it. How have you managed, or what kind of things did you implement for companies? Because, I mean, you've worked with Nestle, Deutsche Bank, Vodafone, huge organizations rolling out big programs of learning. How did you overcome some of those challenges of them actually doing it, following through and really engaging? What were some of the successes that you've done?
Sure. Well, look, I think a lot of it is driven by a business imperative, isn't it? So there's a significant change. So, I mean, back in the deepest of time, I was involved in projects that was about the merger between Royal Bank of Scotland and NatWest, for example. And that's an interesting journey they've been on subsequently, isn't it? So they merged and now became Royal Bank of Scotland, and then 2008 happened. And then, now they're reverting back to their NatWest brand, interestingly. So that's a big cycle that they've been through. But marrying a merger, for example, is one where you see a need to bring some commonality of understanding amongst two disparate audiences. They've got different systems in place, perhaps, or maybe you're replacing one with another. And that's been a common driver, because you've got everyone involved across a large organization. It can be hundreds of thousands of people if they're that sort of size and ilk, internationally spread. And so the only way you can facilitate that is through using learning technology to present as best you can, what the new ways of working are going to be, to maybe simulate those, give people practice in safe ways, so that when all of these systems are turned on and become live, that you're not lost. You know which buttons to push at its simplest level, but you also know why you're pushing those buttons at the right sort of times if it's unfamiliar to you. So a lot of big projects were predicated on big business changes like that. So, and it pushes, back then it was pushing organizations to sort of take, if you like, a risk on what was fairly novel, new, or, innovative, bleeding edge almost types of technology and approach to doing it. Now, that's much more sort of easy and mainstream, so being able to, L&D teams around the world and learning professionals inside organizations have much more capability to be able to support those types of change. And the main critical thing to keep in mind is not seeing this as abstract training that people need to do away from their role and their job, but it's actually needs to be knitted into their everyday work experience. So you have a combination of formal learning opportunities, like a backbone almost, which is then wedded with informal learning opportunities, because we know that more about the learning process now than we did before. Well, I say that, I mean, it's become more mainstreamly understood, how learning operates, is that we're always doing it. It's all the time. It's about being able to nudge and support and people in the right directions at a faster pace than they would do otherwise, using technology, using the right types of content, connecting people to the right people at the right time. And that's what you need to be thinking about, is a much more holistic design approach than ever before.
I like that concept of getting it to the people at the right time in the right context. And you talked there about, often it's driven by a business context. It might be a burning ambition or a burning platform that then will drive this change, a merger, an acquisition, a shift in the marketplace. And so if we add now this speed of things happening, the technology disruption, all coming from lots of places, is that there's almost this urgent need to reskill a workforce to function in different environments. We've all had a global experiment of what remote working feels like and looks like, and we've rallied to that. We've adapted to it, and we've adapted our thinking, adapted our systems, and it's another shared passion of ours in terms of adaptability, that not only the human side, but also the platforms and systems and things that are adaptable. And we always used to, I remember in lots of projects, it was all about future-proofing or flexibility or these kind of words. And I'm interested that what have you seen the balance between those more process, technical-led learning programs, and has there been emerging more around some of the soft skills of humans to help them through that process of uncertainty, of well-being, of change, of their mental health, rather than just, here's a new software we're using, it needs to be deployed, but not necessarily understanding the human side that, hey, it was part of who you were, that you knew that, and now you've got to be vulnerable. Are we supporting you going through that transition? Do you see that happening? Or if not happening, when might you see it happen, or you don't think it is happening? So all of that kind of area of complex question.
Sure. So what you're indicating, Ross, is that in the past, and actually still goes on today, is that we probably take a simplistic approach to how we design training and learning. I'll use the word training because in the broader context, because a lot of organizations around the world and globally, totara, we have a very global view of this, having, what is it now, 1,600 organizations using our platform around the world. We get quite an interesting influx of feedback of how people do actually use a platform of our nature to deliver these things. But when you're designing...
Quick point there, Lars. So you've got 1,600 organizations on the platform, and is it around 20 million users actively using the platform for whether it's engagement, performance, or learning. So you've got a huge wealth of interactive data that you're building there of how companies are, dealing with this challenge. So this is not just opinion. I really want people to understand that, you've got access to such great information and data to base your views on.
Yeah. So, I mean, that's almost federated in because of our model of how we serve customers is through our partner network. We have a global partner network, and those experts use our platform to deliver localized solutions, i.e. ones that are really tailored to meet the specific needs of each organization or industry sector or region. And I think that's important because, back to your question, which is about, the learning, unpacking learning into just the technical component of the knowledge or the process steps or, the describing the behaviors that you want people to have, discounts the emotional impact or input that's required to effect a lasting change. And not just that, but you need to practice it. You don't just have one hit and expect people to have changed. It doesn't work like that. So the learning experience, for it to be truly effective, needs to be considering, yes, all of the content aspects of things, so that people understand things conceptually, and then understand the steps they can take, and then they can practice them, and then they need to be able to reflect on that, and then be able to practice again, and just in a slightly different live context. And it's then that you start to see patterns shift, habits change, and behaviors start to be embedded. So it's a combination of those things, and we recognize that more fully now, that from our perspective at totara, is that you can't see it as just learning, especially in a workplace context. It's not just about learning and training people. It's actually also about understanding how engaged people are in their own workplace, and that's a factor of the culture that they're in, the nature of how clear the alignment is with the organization's purpose, the team's purpose, and then the individual's sense of purpose around that, right? And then the mechanisms that they have to provide feedback, so 2-way or 360 feedback, so that people understand how they're performing. Is it where can they improve? Where are their strengths? How can they really find the right ways to perform at their best? And then how do we collectively, as a support function, when I say that, the sort of wider HR function, but the management community as well inside an organization, how do you support people to do their jobs as well as they can? And often the answer isn't getting in the way, but we often do get in the way. Yeah. It's actually getting out of the way. and getting out of the way is about thinking carefully about that workplace experience, and what are the tools that they're using. Yeah. Or can they find the support they need, both in terms of learning people
so in this concept of learning cultures, eternal learning, rather than you get educated and then you work till you retire from what you were educated before, with an odd bit of top up here and there to continue professional development, but really your learning's done when you're young, and the rest of it is then work experience, right? And you're getting real life experience. We don't necessarily think of that as much historically as learning, to now where we're facing career portfolios, people diverging from industries, roles, all sorts of things, that we're reigniting career paths and career opportunities that never would have been imagined before. And in a world where we're going to be facing life extension, so we're going to be living healthier and longer, the age at which we're valuable is going to increase, and therefore we are going to need to learn more as we go on. And so this kind of situation of organizations ensuring employability of their workforces for wherever they go to navigate change is a really important concept. And I'd like you to think about two stories of experiences where you've worked with organizations who, whatever the context of change is, are putting training in, putting things in. One that worked really well, and a couple of the highlights of why it worked well, and then one and maybe that was epic fail. They tried to do something and they hit a roadblock, or something happened that the listeners can, use, because I found stories are super helpful. You can talk about, context, theories, platforms, technology, till it becomes real of, it was this team, this is what they were facing, and this is what went wrong, or this is what went right, that we can then start to apply some thought process in that. So where have you seen someone doing a training program well, and where have you been involved in something that had an epic fail?
Well, there's quite a few examples of both, I think, over the years that have accumulated up. I think, one that was an early example, or mid example, I think, where we did things right collectively. We did things right. This was actually for Sky, who are the media company based out of the UK. Or we were working with the ones out of the UK, and essentially there was some changes in process that needed to be communicated out through their customer service teams. So traditionally, what would you do? Well, you'd package up some training and deliver it to them, and you would, pull them off the phones and get them to do the training, and then they'd come back. So what we did was not that, at least not that in isolation. They were quite brave at the time, I would say, in taking the advice that what we should be doing is really digging into providing support, so building some learning opportunities, bringing it close to their everyday work experience, so simulating it as close as you can. Yes, you do need to take people away from live customers, but you think about how you reintroduce them and give them time and space to be able to do that well. But then also do a control group, which a lot of organizations worry about that, because that sort of is thought of as, well, that means some people aren't getting the training that we've spent all this money designing. Okay, but actually doing that meant it revealed what difference we were making to the performance of those individuals who were getting the training. So it was done as a big A/B test, if you like, in a short window of time, because of course ultimately, having proved that the learning was making a positive difference, then of course those other people do get the training eventually. But designing the project or the implementation to take that into consideration is something that I'd strongly recommend. It's always recommended, not always taken up, because of that fear factor, perhaps, or an unfounded sort of pressure of time that's applied to projects. Now that went on and saved, it saved money in terms of its implementation, but it also demonstrated that customer success scores were improved, sales were improved as they related to that as well, less errors, all of those metrics, business metrics, actually moved, and you could actually see that because you could spot the difference between the two. It went on to win some awards. That was great for the team as well. But the main thing is it made that business difference, and it was provable. That's where it went really well.
Good point, in terms of, we all have to feed up the chain, whether that's to the end customer or to board or wherever, the impact of whatever resources we've been utilizing, financial, time, or otherwise. And having that clarity by the, courage to split and do a test. Like you say, it's fairly simple, fairly obvious, but takes bravery to just say, for a while, we're not going to train these people, but we will later if it works, if it figures out. And I think that ability now to get rapid feedback of impact, it also means the opportunities for doing that are wider. It's not going to take a long time now to get feedback of what's going on, of what's being impacted, because everything's so plugged in and integrated now, right? We measure just about everything.
We do, yeah, we do, and it comes with a health warning, doesn't it? You need to be really clear about questions you are asking and the data that you're looking to measure. You focus on the metrics that matter, I think is one of the cliche terms, but it's sort of true. But how do they matter? It's important. Otherwise, you can get swamped in data that can be distracting. Yeah, quite.
And you can search for the data to prove what you want, rather than a true experiment is you have a hypothesis and you're looking for the answer, not to justify what you've done. And so that setup is equally important, that it's not only the right metrics, but that you're open to what the data comes back with. To do that. If it didn't provide it, well, that's a great win, so that you're not rolling it out to others, and you can redesign your training or your implementation, your interventions that you're doing. If we flip to an epic fail of something that went wrong and why it went wrong, a bit of a story there. You don't necessarily have to name names of companies or bits, but give us a story there that might be very helpful and maybe contextually relevant to what we're facing right now of such changed circumstances.
Well, I've sort of genericized, I think, the story, because it's sort of happened at different times over the years, and just most recently it's been seen, not necessarily amongst actually our totara community, but for reasons I can explain. But essentially, some organizations have not considered how the end implementation of the program of learning that they want to roll out. They haven't done the work to understand where people's minds are collectively. So the culture, they've misunderstood the culture, they've misunderstood the management teams, or the team leads sort of alignment with supporting initiatives. So there's been a lot of investment made in building a great program of learning, and then you get tumbleweed situations where you launch it, you just place it on a platform, and you expect people to come, and there's been little thought.
Here's the login, go fill your boots, and that's job done.
That's right. There's been no thinking about explaining why this is important, but also just failing to design it with the necessary hooks into making it relevant to people. So that side of things is where I see most of the failures. It is in that. The other aspect of it is about resilience and the brittleness of organizations. I think we've just seen that in the past year, where those organizations who have not invested particularly in understanding their people or supporting their people, either in technology terms or in cultural terms, with the pandemic hitting, you've seen those organizations really struggle to switch to a radically different way of working. So the remote culture, if it would just, I think it is an exaggeration of what you had before. Right? So if it was poor and dysfunctional and fearful, then when everyone went remote, then you're only going to get worse performance and productivity, and probably collapse. And in some cases, that's happened in some organizations. If, on the other hand, you've got and have invested in people and have a culture which has got strong bonds, and there's already been evidence of the sense of safety and good collaboration, then being able to switch mode in that way has been a lot more, successful.
Possible.
Possible, I'm not going to deny it's been probably stressful and challenging for everyone. It has been and still is. But those who have put that in place are in a better place, plus also technology-wise. And that's what we've seen right across our network, is because our technology is open and adaptable, it's meant that organizations could quickly scale or quickly scale back, or add integrations or plug into different technologies as they've needed. And if you weren't in that situation, then stuff broke. And then when stuff breaks, then you're in a really difficult position when you're thrown to the hills, all four hills. And it's very challenging. So
it's the realities of when we talk about these things of whether, or what does a learning culture even blooming look like? You know, what is psychological safety? You know, we have all of these phrases and terms, and then how do we really make that happen and provide that for our workforces when we're, you know, team leaders or head of HR or wherever we sit, is to, on a practical level, what does that really look like? You know, and making good technology decisions is one part of it that allows that flexibility and adaptability to plug into other systems so it flows when there are shifts. The other side that we've recognized is just a lack of understanding of an individual as a human being through those pieces. And that, oh, that was a nice to have, and it was all well-being, and we'll put a room in our office and we'll put a gym membership and we'll do those things. But the mental health aspects that we've now seen come exaggerated of, we're now, you know, removed from that connection. We're just discussing via Zoom and we can't, you know, read the room of what's going on. We haven't got the energy or sense of other departments and other things, and it's very hard to navigate those. And so I think the shift that I'm seeing now, especially for us in measuring things like resilience, measuring unlearning, you know, being able to predict a change readiness and a reskill score of individuals helps you then design on a personal level how to gain that motivation and, you know, engagement, because it's not, as you said, spend all the time create it and go ta-da. You've got to build in those nudges. You've got to build in those behavioral shifts to help them along the way when they're feeling stressed, under pressure, they're having a homeschool. You know, there's all this shift in our complex worlds that we live right now. I'd like to kind of wrap and finish up in a couple of areas. And this is, if you were to predict some valuable skills that you want people to ensure they think about in their training, in their rollout, to prepare for the next, say, 5 years, not even decade, but the next 5 years, knowing that it will, you know, many perhaps thought at the beginning of the pandemic, oh, let's just hang on, hold tight to our seats, and then we'll get back. That's gone now. So many are going, okay, there's things here that are going to stay because it is better, things that aren't better. But what skills, what areas, what kind of training programs would you look to advise to companies with all of your experience to prepare them for what's coming ahead, for the uncertainty, for the complexity? What would you focus on in your design of that?
Sure. I mean, there's a couple of things here. There's one which is, you could split it down in terms of, you know, hard skills and soft skills in one way. And if you there's two things that I think have been happening anyway, but have been massively accelerated and brought to the fore in the past, the past months. And the first one is just recognizing that we're all in a digital sector now, you know, so every organization is being transformed fundamentally into an information technology driven digital, driven organization, even if you haven't spotted it yet. It's happening. So that breaks down into, so whoever does whatever job roles in an organization, those job roles are going to get changed and transformed, and an understanding of how digital is doing that is going to be very helpful to you in staying relevant and staying employable and being able to make that switch to whatever alternative set of competencies that will make up or skills that will make up a new job role. And you talk about 5 years, that's probably, you can't even see that far because of the level of change that's likely to be sort of really happening over the next, that period. So there's that side of it. And then there's the softer skills side, which is, I mean, the World Economic Forum had a report out in October 2020, and that was painting a strong list of what they feel are the key skills that you need. And most of those are around building resilience, being comfortable with change in a positive way, being able to work effectively with others. So collaboration skills and communication skills, they've always been important. I mean, they're not never ever not been important.
Yeah.
It's just I think we're now seeing that big chunks of job roles, which have been very process and oriented, say, are more prone to automation. So those aspects of the job change, and we'll be working alongside technology. And this almost loops back to where we started this conversation, which is, you know, the nature of the tools and that we're using and the technologies we're using need to be supportive of us, you know, so they need to have learning in them to enable us to move from novice through to expert users in a seamless way. And that technology is there, you know, it's only going to become more prevalent and supportive.
I remember over the years, you know, I wouldn't see a CV come in that didn't say I work well with teams and by myself. You know, it's always been there, this collaboration and work well with others, especially if we want to achieve more than just a siloed, you know, creation of art or endeavor. I think what shifted is really important point you made there, Lars, around the world that we now swim in, the water that we're swimming is a digital one. So to the collaboration, the team, the playing well with others is now the playbook is changed. We're in water that's digital. And so whilst we might have had the skills and the playbook to collaborate with team members when we can get in the same room, when we can do those bits, and every now and again, do it via a video conference. Now, how do we do those things where the video conference and disconnect is the norm? That technology should serve us, and it shouldn't be oh, you've got mute on again, or this is happening, or, you know, if we liked Post-its and moving around in our design sprints, how can we use software like Miro, or, you know, all sorts of different things that are able, that potentially are fearful of what's unknown. You know, a new thing comes in, oh, I'm fearful of that AI, of that technology, of these things, because I don't know it yet. So as leaders, I think the fundamental of embracing new things is the new leadership playbook, to be comfortable in that uncomfort, and, you know, to create the place where it will be feeling like a child again, to be curious, to be vulnerable, to explore in those edges and those fringes. And where before you talked about, it was a risk. It was a risk to do these things that were edge and niche in terms of technologies. Now, I think it's the flip, is the risk is not to embrace those.
Yeah, indeed. And I think, you know, from a leadership perspective, how do you structure your organization or nurture your organization to support that type of culture and environment? And, you know, that I think needs a fresh look at what your people function is and how it's structured. It's typically, in many organizations, still quite siloed, you know, around, you know, having an L&D team, an internal comms team, a performance of management sort of team. And there's a danger, and it often happens, is that you just get lots of competing noise down at the employee's screen and desk, you know, in terms of attention, you know. So am I doing learning now? Am I doing performance now? What's this leader program that I now need to do? So there needs to be alignment around that, thinking a bit more holistically about that work-based experience.
Yep.
So that's exactly what we're about at totara, is to provide that foundation so that you can, in a unified way, have learning managed, performance managed, provide a collaborative space in which it can self-organize over time. Otherwise you get chaos. Otherwise you get a lot of friction and frustration. And I think we all want to see it change to be frictionless and fun.
It's
and effective.
A great piece, frictionless, to remove friction. And you talked a few little gold nuggets of sometimes it's just getting out of the way is the opportunity, and removing things. You know, it's the multiplication by subtraction. So by removing some of those key friction points in the experience, you then can multiply the effectiveness or performance or wherever it may be. And I'd love this vision that you share of, rather than it's an event, it's a workshop, I've got to go and do that, and it's something on my list to do and to be managed, to just, I've redesigned the work experience. And the experience then is made up of all of these different things that might be productivity and learning and something else. And we've looked at the moments that we can have impact. Where can we bring joy? Where can we bring a smile? Where can we bring an opportunity for them to share what they've learned from a silo to a colleague and feel that, empowered sense when you've helped someone else? It's an incredible endorphin rich, dopamine hit when you've served somebody. And, and to give people the opportunity to do that is an exciting time to be alive, that, we can create systems and tools, but at the heart of it is always the human.
Absolutely. And one final point, though, I think, this is not a choice for organizations anymore. Expectations have changed. I know right now we're in a pandemic and there's an awful lot of things that have been thrown at us that have forcing some very uncomfortable change, and probably in sometimes the wrong direction, it feels. But if you look slightly beyond that and optimistically look beyond that, you can see that people coming into the workforce, expectations of what that means to work is shifting. So if you're interested in attracting talent and holding on to talented people, and those skills that we were talking about earlier, are still in short supply relatively. They need to be more ubiquitous, and they will be. That's you need to think very carefully about that experience and to make it attractive.
A key, employee benefit is the development of that employee. And that is essential, especially when the half-life of skills and bits are shrinking all the time, that we've got to be on this continual journey. Well, I can't wait. We've got so many plans and interactions together in our collaborations and our futures. I'm looking forward to our webinar coming up as well, and how our two organizations can help that same mission to ensure people aren't left behind. How do we provide a future for everyone that brings a smile, that brings joy and excitement, and doesn't feel like, going back to the memories of, I have to go back to school, kind of sense, but just know this is enriching my life. And I'm really feel privileged to have met you in our journey at this stage. And I'm excited to see what we can create together. So thanks very much, Lars, for joining us.
Thanks, Ross.
Do you have the level of adaptability to survive and thrive the rapid changes ahead? Has your resilience got more comeback than a yo-yo? Do you have the ability to unlearn in order to reskill, upskill and break through? Find out today and uncover your adaptability profile and score, your AQ. Visit AQai.io to gain your personalized report across 15 scientifically validated dimensions of adaptability. For a limited time, enter code PODCAST65 for a complimentary AQME assessment. AQai, transforming the way people, teams, and organizations navigate change. Thank you for listening to this episode of Decoding AQ. Please make sure you subscribe on your favorite podcast directory, and we'd love to hear your feedback. Please do leave a review, and be sure to tune in next time for more insights from our amazing guests.